Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews. I'm Judith and you're watching another episode of Overbooked on the channel. This is the series where I review every single book on my shelves because we must go quietly into the great beyond. Today we are talking about V.E. Schwab's The Dark Vault, or the Archived series. We'll talk more about it in a second. Watch the intro music. Yes, after last week's venture into The Near Witch, we are moving on to the next book of V. Schwab's that I own. This bind-up came out in 2018, and the bind-up is called The Dark Vault. The series is called The Archived. The first book is called The Archived. The second book is called The Unbound, I'm pretty sure. Yes, the Archived and the Unbound novels shoved together. There's a short story added into this. This is during that period of time, are we out of that period of time, where publishers were just throwing V. Schwab's everything back at us so that we could read it. And hey, I'm not mad at it. I bought them all. So yes, the first book did originally come out in 2013, but we're talking about this from I read this in 2018 kind of perspective. This is V. Schwab's YA, I think. Yes, definitely. I don't know why I said I think. It's YA, that's what it is. It is paranormal fantasy. It is, I would describe it as that particular kind of paranormal fantasy where you are a teenage girl living in the world, but you also have a secret magical aspect to your life. That's the mood we're going for here. I'll talk more about it in just a second. Because first, disclaimers. I bought this book myself. Nobody's paying me to talk about books, and all opinions are my own. I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as humanly possible. If you do want to go in knowing absolutely nothing, click away now, and I will link the story graph below in case you want to check out any user-generated content warnings. If you don't know who V.E. Schwab is, she's an author. She's written heaps and heaps of stuff. I've met her a couple of times. Very nice person. We're talking about her for the next few weeks, so if you have already subscribed, you will know of most of her works by the time we're done with this. Let me read to you from the blurb for ease. Imagine a place where the dead rest on shelves like books. Each body has a story to tell, a life seen in pictures only librarians can read. The dead are called histories, and the vast realm in which they rest is the archive. Mackenzie Bishop's grandfather first brought her here 4 years ago when she was 12 years old, frightened but determined to prove herself. Now her grandfather is dead, and Mac has grown into what he once was, a ruthless keeper tasked with stopping often violent histories from waking up and getting out. Because of her job, she lies to the people she loves, and she knows fear for what it is, a useful tool for staying alive. So we have Mac Mackenzie, who's working in this sort of magical library of the dead, also dealing with the death of her brother. There's a lot going on for Mac. It is a troubled teen, but not in a troubled teen industry kind of way. She just is a teen who is troubled, dealing with her problems. I think this is what I would describe as a slightly melancholy fun YA time. You know, there are some books that are a fun YA time and you're like, this is silly, I had a great time with this. And there are some books where you're like, this is still somewhat silly and I had a great time with this, but it has an aura of grief to it. And that's really my sweet spot. I sit in the slightly melancholy YA zone. I really like this idea of a kind of afterlife of sorts, this idea of this place where the almost memories of the dead sit and are looked after. I think that's something that I've always really liked in books. Things like Hell's Library has that element to it. There's a lot going on. I really like books that explore an afterlife where it's not about necessarily the person in themselves. I think that's really fascinating, and the idea of a character who has access to that but is not allowed to fully explore it for various reasons that the book goes into is a really interesting point of contention in the story. And on top of that, we have the whole attractive boy who happens to also be around. That happens in this series. I don't think we are surprised. It is 2013 YA. There's an element of books about books in this. I've talked about that on this channel multiple times. It's usually not my thing. I think because in this case they aren't really books, they're dead people. I don't mind it as much. It's not too wanky about it. However, if that is something that you really don't like, or that's something you love, take that into consideration if you're planning on reading this. And I think my feeling on this, again, personal preference is going to come into play here. I didn't mind the teenager having to hide her secret life from everyone, including her parents. Often it really bothers me because it gets really bogged down in almost always homework. I think in this case, the balance is about right in how much that plays into the conflict of the story. Because we meet Mackenzie when she's had a bit of time to get settled into the routine of this life that she has, we're not dealing with, oh no, I keep almost revealing myself to my family. It's more about the ways in which that causes conflict within her family. I would say if you're a person who really hates that trope, this might not be for you at all. I think if you're a person who's like on the fence about it or really likes it, this would be fine. If memory serves, book 2 had a bit more of that to it. But that might just be me misremembering. When you read things as a bind-up, they get very mushed together. I'll come on to that towards the end. My last thing I'll say is that this really feels like a book that teenage Judith would have absolutely loved, which would be about right for 2013. I would have been the late stages of my teenagerdom, and I think that it really captures a lot of that longing for mystery. That's something that comes up a lot in V. Schwab's books, is this idea of people who have access to a world beyond their own world. And I really, really liked that idea, and I can see teenage Judith becoming very obsessed. Like, I definitely would have worn a little key around my neck. It would have been a whole thing. I was that kid. So yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily it would apply to young people now. Perhaps we've moved on from that. Perhaps that's not as much of a trope. I don't know, because I am me now. But I thought it was worth mentioning that I really think I would have absolutely loved this as a teenager. As an adult, I see some issues with it, but that's life, that's growing up. One of the things I will say about this in kind of like the negative sense is it is an unfinished series, technically. V. Schwab has said she's not going to finish it. There's a lot of past complicated stuff to do with the publication of the book. So this is what you get. I do actually think this works as a duology in a bind-up. I think it works as a single, quite chunky novel. Look, you can see where I've had tabs in it, and the sun's... Oh, you probably can't see because the lighting's really harsh in here, but I've had tabs in it, and the sun's bleached the pages. That's really sweet. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, it works as a bind-up, yes. I think if you treat that as one story, a good time. I don't think I left it feeling like I really wanted more. I think I did the first time that I read it, but now, knowing that you're never going to get any more, there's some kind of closure in there, at least for me. The other thing I'll say is it does feel very early Schwab. It was, first book was 2011, we're at 2013 now. It's 10 years ago. Ooh. Oof. I think her newer stuff has a bit more depth to it than this does. I still think this is interesting, I still think it's worth reading, but I think it's a little... It feels like it thinks it has more substance than it does. I think that's what I want to say. It feels like it thinks it is more deep than it is, and that's something that I was very aware of while reading it. And it's something that I don't find as much, or at least I don't remember finding as much with her later stuff. So we shall see when I reread other things, which I've not yet done at the point of filming this, whether I feel the same way. We're building on each video, stacking them, we're learning what we think about things. Let's go! If you're wanting to read similar things, I already mentioned Hell's Library. I think that would be a really interesting read, again for the perspective of something being saved in an afterlife in a non-traditional way. In Hell's Library, it is all the unwritten books, the books that have never been finished. Oh, it's so fantastic. I really want to reread that series. I've been talking about that a lot lately. In terms of other things, obviously Portal Fantasy is going to come into it a little bit. So obviously Wayward Children, things like that. I don't think Wayward Children is as direct a comparison as it has been with other things. I think if you were thinking more V. Schwab, I would lean into the Dark Shade of Magic series, which is something we're going to be talking about in a couple of weeks. Might even be next week, actually. And also I wondered about Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I think that also captures a lot of the similar sort of teen angst emotion that this book has in a lot of ways. I'm really excited to reread that. I'm slightly nervous that I'm going to have to face my younger self and her obsession with that series, but that will come in the fullness of time. By the time we finish this series, I will be done with it, and I will have read it again, and I will tell you all my feelings. Daughter of Smoke and Bone, in terms of having access to a world beyond worlds, was my feeling on that. Should you read this? I would say if you, again, similar to The Near Witch, if you love V. Schwab, I would say it's worth reading. If you're really into YA, particularly from around about 2013, I think you'll enjoy this. If you are not a YA person, I wouldn't pick this up. If you are a person who wants to explore more books about death, I would say yes. It's going to depend on your feelings. I don't know that this is a definite 100% yes from me, but I don't regret reading it. Have you read this? Do you have plans to? Let me know down in the comments below. You can also tell me your favourite V. Schwab book, and I'll tell you if we're going to come to it in the Overbooked chain of events. While you're down there commenting, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated. You can also follow me on social media. Come hang out on Discord, where we have chill chats about books. I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all the ghosts who haunt me over on Patreon. They support the channel and in return get early access to bonus content, they get early access to videos, bonus content, and live streams. If you would like to join their number, that's linked down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. There's gonna be some bloopers now. Now her grandfather is dead, and Mac has grown into what he once was, a ruthless keeper tasked with stopping often violent histories from waking people up. No, not. Now her grandfather is dead, and Mac has grown into what he... Obviously Portal Fantasy is gonna come in. Obviously Portal Fantasy... Ugh. I really need to get on and read those videos. Read those videos, read those books.